today. Just a reminder that we love questions from the audience, so you can start commenting your questions now, or you can also add them as we go. I'll be right back on to welcome our guests to the show.
Sometimes coordinating multiple loads, clients, emails, and accounts becomes confusing and tedious. Introducing Tide TMS, the first all-in-one tool that helps you optimize your freight broker processes. You can send and receive quotes, review the shipment status, and keep control of your invoices all from one single screen. It's easy to manage and utilizes the best integrations. Don't take our word for it, our customers are raving about Tide. With Tide, you can improve your productivity by 75%. Go to tidesoftware.com and get a free demo now.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 38 of the Meet Me for a Coffee podcast. I hope you guys are excited as I am to talk to Mr. John Sutton today. I'm going to bring him on in just a moment. I did want to go ahead and say that starting in July and moving through the rest of the year, if you guys have any questions about Tide TMS, I wanted to make myself available. I know sometimes it's not very fun to book a demo with a salesperson and feel like you have to go through that process. So if you guys just have questions, you want my honest thoughts, opinions, as someone who personally used Tide TMS to scale a brokerage, I am happy to answer those questions. And so you guys just message me privately and I can send you a link to my own personal Calendly. Happy to talk through that with you guys. Would love to talk to you more about their software, figure out if it's a good fit for your business or not, and give what I feel is pretty truly unbiased advice and opinions. So without further ado, I would like to bring on John and have him give a quick introduction of himself. Good morning, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good morning. It's so great to be on here, and I'm actually excited to actually be meeting you for coffee today. I've got my mug with my dog Winston on there, but I'm John Sutton. I'm the Director of Corporate Strategy for Sunset Transportation based in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a 10-year industry veteran with third generation diesel in my blood is what I like to call it. My grandpa drove truck, my dad drove truck, and then I betrayed the family, kind of like Luke and Darth Vader, and I went to the brokerage side. There's still some bad blood at Christmas, about that career change. But ultimately, I've been surrounded by logistics my entire life. The operations side is where I got my roots, and I started in operations 10 years ago at Sunset, and then ultimately moved into the role that I have today for corporate strategy. And I'm super excited to talk to you today about my take on that and what that looks like as a corporate strategist in 2024 for a freight brokerage.
Yes, absolutely. So I have to give a quick shout out to my friend Graham at Reliance Partners because we were at TIA and he said, "Hey, I have this dinner with a bunch of cool people. They're going to be there. You should come." And so I got to join, and that's where we got to meet John. And so shout out to Graham, always bringing industry professionals together. He does a great
He's going
job.
to be really disappointed about you exposing the kind of Illuminati that we have. So now that's out of the bag. Everyone knows.
Yep. But we got to meet at dinner. And I think the first thing I noticed was as soon as I asked, what you do, you told me your role at Sunset. And it just instantly stood out to me because I thought corporate strategy, I feel like that has just been like a long time coming and a little bit overdue for brokerages, carriers, and even shippers to start having someone with a role titled something strategy, specifically focused on logistics and transportation. So on the brokerage side, specifically carrier side, I just feel like there's so much going on these days that it takes a full-time role and someone leading efforts to understand what's going on in the market, what's available to us. So kind of explain to me real quickly, if you don't mind, what is the role of a director of corporate strategy and what is it that you're doing?
Sure. So I think that, as you mentioned, the emergence that you're seeing in the logistics and transportation space, regardless of if you're on the asset side, the brokerage side, the shipper side, et cetera, the emergence of folks that are in a strategy role, there's a strong correlation between the emergence of technology that is in the marketplace today. Jokingly, I said last year, going into the holiday season, I'm like, you know what? If I wanted to be able to buy all of my Christmas presents this year, I would just answer all of those LinkedIn messages that I get for like, hey, do this demo for a $25 gift card, do this demo for a $100 gift card. And I would get enough like in a week to be able to get all the presents that I needed for the holidays. But jokingly, but not jokingly, the emergence of tech, if I wanted to spend my entire 40-hour week on product demos, it's realistic. I could today. There is just so much tech in the marketplace. And I think that a lot of executives get FOMO whenever they look at that tech and they're just like, oh, if I'm not using this, am I falling behind? And I think that by bringing in a corporate strategist, it really helps to create an insulation or a buffer between the operation, the business, and the emerging technology to understand what is legitimately able to contribute and make an impact on your business and what is just noise and buzzwords. Okay. Right. And really helping to eliminate that FOMO and give you the peace of mind that that from a market intelligence and a market research perspective, that you are keeping up with the Joneses. No pun intended. But it helps to really eliminate that FOMO that you see, especially on LinkedIn with all of the new tech that is coming out, and making sure that you have the confidence that you have the latest and greatest, and what you've made the investment in is the right investment whenever it comes to your modern business application stack.
Okay. So you said something there that kind of caught my attention when you said bring in like corporate strategists, but I know you mean creating that role, but how long have you been with Sunset?
10 years.
10 years. So what do you think, like, how important do you think that is in your current role now, though? Because you came up through the operations at Sunset and like you have a really great understanding of the business and how it functions at a granular level. That I'm sure that that's enabling you as the corporate strategist now to better understand what technology fits, what doesn't, because you came through the brokerage, you came through the operations, and the business very well. So how does that do you think that, I guess what I'm getting at here is maybe someone who's already used to your internal operations can become that great strategist champion for your business?
I think that was critical to our decision to pioneer a strategy team, and that the head of that team was someone that has been kind of quote grass-fed Sunset in a way, starting off in track and trace. I've been an account manager. I've been a carrier sales rep. I've been a pricing analyst. I've been in IT. I've seen a lot of what makes the organization tick and have a pretty solid understanding of the end-to-end life cycle from the time that we prospect a client to the time that we get the first invoice out the door and everything that goes into supporting that transaction. However, I feel that while that was critical to pioneering the first team, I still feel like there can still be a lot of success by hiring someone externally that has been in that position before, especially for a larger sized organization too. So I think that there's merit to both sides. And I've personally always said that I feel like my biggest weakness is that I actually haven't spent time at a large shop. And I haven't seen the inner workings of the machine whenever it comes to the huge players in our space. You don't know what you don't know, right? So to me, it's honestly a blessing and a curse that while I've spent the first 10 years of my career here at a great company, I would also love to just be able to pull behind the curtain at some of the larger shops, especially with what they're doing on the IT side there too. So I think that you can, there is a little bit of best of both worlds there, and there's merit to both approaches, whether that person is internal or an external hire.
Okay, so I would agree with you there. But I also think it's funny because I think like the large people who have spent a lot of time at these large companies and coming from a large company, I don't think any one person really understands all of the internal workings because it is so large and fragmented as well. That would be an interesting challenge to tackle too. I want to ask, we opened this up. We talked about tech pretty much immediately. When we talk about corporate strategy, we talk about product demos, we talk about all the available technology out there. I think a lot of the focus of corporate strategy right now is going to be around like what technology and what tools fit into your business and how. But that sounds a little bit like, I'm going to say like some common themes that people are concerned about in this space. One being like, how much do we surrender to technology versus allowing our people to do? And then the other kind of being the idea of like a digital brokerage. And we've seen some things not work so well in that space or have to shift in that space. And so when we're talking corporate strategy, are we talking about turning people's roles over to technology? And are we talking about digital brokerage, or what is your kind of opinions and take on this?
We're talking about doing what makes the most sense. Ultimately, what decisions can we make today that help the business to remain competitive in our service offering and also scale 3, 5, 10 years down the road? And we're, as a privately held, family-owned business, very focused on making sure that we stay true to what our product has been over the past 5 to 10 years, and that is our people. And our strategy particularly is making sure that we're investing in the right tools, the right features that enable the well-trained logistics professionals that we have today to be able to focus on the tasks that they have been well-trained to be able to handle, especially in the way of fires that come up every single day, exceptions that come up every single day, and turn over a lot of the basic or low cognitive tasks where we can to technology, to AI, to other opportunities that are out there. And ultimately, I think that there's, I think you've heard the term smart brokerage, right? There's the digital brokerage, and then there's the smart brokerage, which is halfway between the traditional side and the digital side. And it is a company that is rich in culture, rich in employee engagement, but at the same time, empowered and backed up by the best tech that the industry has to offer. The tech supports the people don't support the tech. If I had to define what a smart brokerage is. However, you're going to see that approach is a lot different for publicly traded companies that have shareholders to report to, where every single penny towards OpEx is put under a microscope. And the thought process there is just radically different for what it means to be able to support a shipper, support a transportation transaction. While some people say it's just point A to point B, I think that long-term there's a lot more to it than that. And we need to make sure that we're investing in the tech that allows us to meet the client where they are. If we have clients that say, I tender you loads by carrier pigeon, great, I'm going to become a falconer. Or we have some clients that are going to say, I want 100% touchless, hands-off experience with you. We're a very large organization. We're very busy people. I want 100% integration. The only time that I ever want to be in contact with you is whenever it comes to exception management. That's great too. Just I have to make sure that my stack is capable of supporting any which way a client prefers to interact with us. We are not, as a smart brokerage, going to put you in a box. We're going to come to you, and we're going to make sure that we tailor our interactions to you as a healthy mix of human in the loop and technology based off of your preferences. Did I lose you?
Yeah, we've been dropping. So I'll just tell anybody who is listening, the audio is streaming through. So it'll on playback, it'll be good.
Okay.
But we're just losing you in a few spots here and there.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. We'll be good on the audio version playback. So if we miss anything super important, everybody can listen back to this episode and grab it. But we're getting most of it. So what I wanted to say on that piece is I totally understand making sure that you're meeting your customers where they're at, right? You want to be, like you said, about the carrier pigeons are fully automated. And I think to me, also probably part of what you have to focus on is, yes, how do we meet them where they're at, but how do we do it in a way that doesn't disrupt my people, doesn't make their lives difficult, doesn't make them have, that lower work quality when they come to work every day. And so that's kind of part of it is like, we do need to meet shippers where they're at. I just had a recent conversation. I think it was with Dima and Chad on my last podcast episode. And they were talking about how, shippers ultimately run this market. They determine what we're going to do, what we're not going to do from an ESG perspective, from a DEI perspective, from everything else, what standards they set, we adhere to if we want to be partners with them. And I see it the same from a business, how we do business together, right? From an operational standpoint, from a technology standpoint, when some of these shippers decided we're going to do API rating. And if you want to stay involved in certain parts of our business, you have to adhere to API rating. And that was discussed. And now I think maybe we're seeing some progression into different types of scheduling automations or different types of integrations, API instead of the EDIs or whatever we're talking about. Ultimately, if shippers say this is how we do business, then as a broker or carrier, if you want to do business with them, you're going to have to figure that out. But as you do that, how do you ensure that you are, I don't want to say like protecting your employees, but to an extent, like you don't want to make someone's life super tedious and difficult and quite frankly, just a job nobody wants to do for the sake of that business. Or I would expect you'll start to see internal problems, turnovers, lower job satisfaction. So how do you kind of try to balance both meeting your internal stakeholders' expectations and your clients' expectations?
That's a good one. So it's getting in the trenches with them primarily. Especially whenever it comes to implementation, to new client implementation, and knowing, like working alongside them and making sure that they know that on that day one of that new shipper implementation under integration, that this is it. This is the rockiest it's going to be. And I'm going to be working alongside you over the next few months to get this to a more manageable point. Your pain points are my pain points from a corporate strategy perspective, especially whenever it comes to digital interaction with shippers, specific to a way that that account manager or that customer rep has never interacted with the shipper in that capacity before. It's operating it from day one under the assumption that it gets better. And I promise that we are going to get this to a point that is to your liking, that is to your preference, while at the same time keeping the client happy. It's something that we've seen time and time again with new large shippers that come into our ecosystem that, holy crap, like day one, it's like a metaphorical bomb just went off. I don't know how I'm going to manage this. And then next thing you know, 3 months later, after nickel and diming our way to $1 with continuous improvement and how we interact with that strategy, we're now repurposing members of that team onto other teams because we've been able to make the way by which we manage that business so lightweight over time. And I am, I don't want to say I'm batting 1,000 on being able to make that vision come to life, but we're batting 1,000 here at Sunset. Every large shipper that we've worked with to be able to get in some kind of integration strategy, we have always been able over time to get it to a near touchless state of management. And I'm confident that we can do it time and time again. So it's definitely something that keeps people up at night. Especially whenever you hear, hey, you've been selected to be the new account manager on this account, that everything that they do is tendered to us API. Every shipment that they rate is a real-time market rate using the APIs. And you're like, I can't even spell API. What's going on? And then you get thrown into the deep end, and 3 months later, it's awesome.
Yeah. Now that makes me think about when COVID started and we went into the pandemic, and I went from an outside sales role to like working from home, and they gave me, Microsoft Teams and all these things that crazy think we didn't have before. And I was like, I can't stand this. If we're doing this in 3 months, like I'm going to have to find a different career. And in 3 months, I was like, I will never go back to doing what I was doing.
Exactly.
So sometimes change is a little bit scary. Thankfully, it's all about probably that leadership, the process, the culture that you have around you.
Well, Sander, I like to say that there's two things that brokers always hate: change and the status quo. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Okay. I'm going to pivot because we've talked about this before. It's a little bit more off topic, but still related to technology, actually. We were talking about like homegrown tech, doing things in-house versus outsourcing or buying different technology platforms or even just different tools. And so I was thinking, of some examples recently where obviously we saw Transfix is separating and going two separate directions, right? So they're keeping the technology with them. They're selling off the brokerage piece. Convoy didn't last, but they had both. We've seen other companies where, I've heard of things where they said, we developed this tool, but we don't want to keep up with it. We can't maintain it. Like, we want someone else to come in and provide basically a SaaS solution for us to replace this. What's your take on this? Like homegrown tech, in-house IT teams creating these developments, or outsourcing it and finding a partner who does it?
Yeah, personally, we have seen that from our advisors in an M&A perspective, that homegrown tech actually in 2024 stands to lower your valuation from an M&A perspective, especially if that tech is over 10 years old. And it's not to say that the tech isn't effective or very good at what it does. That is a function of the ability to maintain, update, and support the tech for, the long term. There's a lot of tech in the space. I mean, you come from the LTL world, right? How many LTL carriers are still working on a homegrown green screen? You show a junior developer in 2024 straight out of college an IBM machine or AS400 and say, congratulations, this is what you're working on. And they're just like, oh my God, I saw this on the History Channel. It's the ability to really support that tech and be able to come in and untangle it. Whereas from an off the rack perspective, the responsibility of that tech being easy to use, especially from like an API modernization standpoint, is no longer your responsibility. You just need a modern developer that is capable of working with modern solutions, but that developer doesn't have to build those solutions themselves. And it gets to the point where that developer is primarily just interfacing applications together, plugging it in here, like the Xbox to the TV, right? Plug it in here, done, establishing data flows, as compared to needing to build that from scratch. And it's a much more effective use of a developer's time from that perspective. I recently had a conversation with a large brokerage in the space. They're around $1 billion and a half, and they're 100% homegrown on their technology. And the IT team that supports their TMS is 17 developers deep. Whereas I look at that as a function of our staff, and it's a very, very low ratio of us who use off the rack tech. We're very proud McLeod customers compared to a homegrown solution. But again, that's not to say that the homegrown solution isn't effective or very, very good at what it does. It just really paints a picture as to how much goes into being able to support that tech from a homegrown perspective versus an off the rack perspective.
Yeah. And I heard recently, it was a brokerage who had someone internally who helped them build and design some new integrations and tools that were, proprietary to them in the way that they functioned. But then that person got, poached or whatever you want to say, recruited by another brokerage to come do something for them. And when they left, the brokerage was like, we don't really know. Like, there's not really somebody, like, we don't know what logic he necessarily put into this. And we don't really have somebody else immediately who can like remedy this situation for us. And so I think that that's also another kind of risk, I guess, to having your own stuff developed, is that if you lose that person for any reason, retirement, like they go to another company, they have health issues and they're out, like you're going to be in an exposed position too with your tech stack that you might not love. And I feel like your risk just increased when you were reliant on one or two individuals within your organization to be able to sustain something that, if it was worth implementing, is probably affecting the day-to-day operations for a lot of your clients' business accounts.
Yeah. And from a strategy perspective, that's something that you should always be constantly thinking of. The nice way to put it is, win the lottery, right? If person A wins the lottery, what do? The way that we look at it is nuclear winter. Basically, if we don't have this person tomorrow, what happens? And forcing yourselves to go through those exercises, pulling that person just out of nowhere off certain tasks and saying, okay, now figure this out without this person, and being able to evaluate what the gaps are and being able to plug that long term. And you really identify a lot of training needs and the ability to get people up to speed quickly by doing that. But unless you make it difficult on yourself as an organization and really twist that knife a little bit every now and then, you're doing yourself a disservice by, as you mentioned, one day that person is going to win the lottery. What do?
Yeah. Okay, I have another question kind of along the same lines as this. I'm thinking about like how I think some large brokerages, this was a couple of years ago actually that I heard some of these numbers. Some like really large companies were saying that up 50% of their employee base was now millennials or younger. And I'm thinking kind of about, I think there's a lot of young people now in the tech space, or also in brokerage. And it's great to see. Like I feel like we're trending. Like you go to college and you're like, I'm going to go into freight brokerage because I know 10 people who are in freight brokerage now or in trucking or whatever. So it's really cool.
We were at a job fair at the University of Kansas in February this year. And for the first time in my career, someone came up to me and said, I want to be a freight broker. And I'm like, you want to do what we do? And normally it takes a lot of convincing. Or I work for a trucking company that doesn't own any trucks, and people's brains just explode. So you're absolutely right. They are teaching freight brokerage in school now, and it's really cool to see.
We're having a rough day, man. We need more coffee, apparently.
I know. I'm sorry. I think
no,
it's
yeah, I don't know if it's me or you at this point. So, okay, let's rewind. Let's talk about that one real quick. You said the last thing I heard is you said they're teaching freight brokerage in school.
Yeah, they are. Having college seniors come up and say, I want to be a freight broker. It's surprising and refreshing at the same time. And it's great to see, especially post-COVID, that the value of a resilient supply chain is now well known across the country more than it has ever been. And that is drawing especially young adults who they want a reliable, safe, secure, recession-proof job post-college into supply chain. It may not be glamorous, but it's realistic. And we're seeing a lot of draw based off of that.
So what impact are these younger generations or these kids who are coming out of college? We say kids, these young adults who are coming out of college. What impact?
Oh no.
What impact are these college kids who are coming in, these younger generations, or maybe even people who go into a different industry and then come in pretty quickly to this one because there's this.
I'm so sorry. I didn't catch anything from like the last 30 seconds.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I think it's me. I don't know.
We made it to episode 38 for my first episode 38. I would like everyone to know I had a great run of not having any major technological difficulties until episode
Sorry.
38. Is it like because we're talking about technology on this podcast that we had to have?
Yeah, the powers that be, the Graham Gonzalez and the Illuminati are definitely like, you caused this, okay?
That's the segment I'm short clipping out of this one to share, so Graham can see that. Okay, if we can get through this last question, I was really just wanting to know what kind of trends that these younger generations are bringing into the brokerage landscape, the shipper carrier landscape, and what are some things that you're seeing kind of change the way we function within our businesses and maybe also within the technology side of our businesses.
So one thing that's been really cool to see, regardless of the generations over the years, from whenever my generation came into the freight brokerage workforce, whenever the generation before me came into the freight brokerage workforce, and this newest generation, is every single every single person that has decided to enter the space, that has taken a flyer on brokerage operations, wants to make an impact from day zero. That has remained consistent across it. However, how they make that impact is totally different. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like we look at Gen X, or for example, I'm a millennial. We look at Gen X and their supervisor came in and they said, I want you to jump. And they'll say, great, I'll get on that. 3 days later, the supervisor comes back and says, did you jump? And the Gen Xer says, yeah, I took care of that 3 days ago. The millennial supervisor says jump. The millennial comes back the next day. I've been watching all kinds of YouTube videos. I think that I figured out the best possible way for us to jump. And he's like, but did you jump? It's like, no, I haven't jumped yet. And then you have the newest generation. It's like, hey, I need you to go ahead and jump. And they go home and they tell their parents, and they're like, oh my God, you can't believe what this person is asking me. But at the end of the day, all three of us have figured it out. And we have all been resourceful enough to ask the right questions and ultimately open ourselves up to the tech that will allow us to do whatever our job function is to the best of our ability. And the newest generation has been more tech apt, more tech savvy than we have ever seen. And their willingness to alter and adjust their processes on the fly has been remarkable relative to whenever I have started. And I think that that's primarily because of rubric culture. And what I mean by that is the newest generation was always given a matrix that says, here's a project and here's what constitutes success. If you do these things, you will get a 5. If you do these things, you will get a 4. And they want to go for the 5. So if you can lay out what success looks like, provide easy to follow processes and easy to understand KPIs, the newest generation in the workforce is striving for a 5. I promise you. And if you can make the most out of that mentality that's been ingrained in them as they came through, the K through 12 and post-grad education system, you can really, really, really use that to your advantage, get the newest generation up to speed quickly, and really develop the next generation of leaders in a way that we previously weren't accustomed to seeing leaders emerge. So it's just been really cool getting to be on the sidelines and cheer on a lot of the new folks who have proven that they are capable of hitting the ground running faster than whenever my generation or the generation before mine entered the workforce. And it's going to be really cool to see what happens here over the next 5 to 7 years as they become key decision makers at freight brokerages. And they're making decisions on behalf of shippers. They're making tech decisions, and they're making decisions that affect the bottom line. So I'm just really excited for what the future holds for the next generation of leaders that understand the value of a resilient supply chain.
Yeah. And I think as you were talking about that, I'm thinking about my little mini soapbox is that we actually had an interesting conversation once, and we talked about like how you can gamify your operations because get things done efficiently. They don't want to do this like Here is the order and email. Let's plug in all these dots into
Right.
this tech platform. Like, so they want things to move fast. They want technology to come in. We're talking about people who have grown up having everything can be instantly done. I mean, Apple Pay on my phone.
Right.
If I can't Apple Pay something, I'm not buying it. If it doesn't autofill and I have to get up and go get my debit card and punch in a bunch of numbers, I'm probably not going to buy it. And that's like a mindset that I have, that when I think about it, it's funny, but like, yeah, in brokerage, if I have to get like information on something else, piece of paper or an email, go manually punch in all of these things, I'm going to become increasingly more frustrated.
Right.
Whatever it is that automated process can look like. So I think that that's another reason corporate strategy is such a cool role right now, because we're figuring out how to advance brokerages from a technological standpoint. Absolutely. Hopefully that's helping to improve efficiencies, increase margins, help your bottom line. But I think like a whole other part of this and like the benefits is you're more appealing to the talent pool now. You're more appealing to people of all generations who say, I like technology. I like what it's doing in my personal life.
Right.
I like what it can do in business, and it can make me have a better, more satisfied work life, just like it does have its benefits in my personal life as well. And so I think that that's a really cool part of this. The last thing I would add to that, as I'll kind of close this up, is if that's the direction that some brokerages are moving right now, like Sunset, and you guys are doing this and you're years into this already, where is that going to leave the people who aren't doing this right now and who aren't evaluating this? I think that it's not going to be fun to try to play catch up when the talent pool is gravitating away from you, when you're struggling to hire, when your operations cost more to sustain now than your competitors because it's all manual. You're running with higher head counts. I think it's going to be a very scary place to have to play all of that catch up in 2 years, 5 years, however long that takes. So hopefully everyone listening has kind of maybe had some things to think about and kind of consider the role of like a corporate strategy or something similar to that. I'm going to stop pushing my luck with I can see my producer backstage just stressing out this whole time. So thanks for everyone who was listening and who put up with us. The recording will hopefully be better. We will be sharing that on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. The playback will be here on LinkedIn, of course. I'm going to go ahead and drop some conferences in the comments. We have some conferences coming up that I'm going to be attending. I'd love for you guys to let me know if you're going to be there. We have Trimble Insight in Las Vegas in September. JOC Inland in Chicago in, I think it's like the very end of September, beginning of October, right on that line. And then Manifest Las Vegas, of course, we're already planning for February of 2025 because that's one that you definitely want to be well prepared for so you can fill up your agenda. John, where will you be next? Are you heading out anywhere on any travels?
We are getting out on the trail in August. We will have the Bitfreighter second annual ALS benefit golf tournament that I would highly recommend, regardless if you're a Bitfreighter client, if you're in the Nashville or Freight Alley area, to definitely attend. It's a great event and a lot of sponsors there. September, we have the McLeod Annual Users Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's one of my favorite events every year. And then October is the heavy hitter with the TIA Technovations Conference. Technovations is a one-of-a-kind event that features industry speed dating. You get 15 minutes on stage with a vendor for them to give you their full value prop and what they mean and the impact that they're able to make to your business today. So really, really cool way to have a low-stress demo of sorts, if you will, and really get up to speed on all of the tech that is out there today if you're someone that may be unfamiliar with it.
Very cool. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me for coffee this morning. Thank you for actually having coffee and no with your adorable dog Winston there on the cup. I appreciate you coming on. We will have, like we said, the recorded version will be available within the next 24 to 48 hours. And thank you again to everyone for meeting us for coffee today.